Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato nabhyat itaratascha swavigyaswarat.
Janmadhyasya yata vayaritaratascha swavigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Suraya.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Suraya.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimaya Yatra Trisargomisha.
Tejo Varimda Yata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargomisha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna
and the primeval cause of all causes. Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause behind him.
And he is independent because there is no cause behind him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Projita Kaitravutra Paramo Nimatsranam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulnam Srimad Bhagvatam Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapurer Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Kriti Bihi Sususabis Dakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam Pibata bhagavatam rasam ulayam Muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagvatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani Vidunati Srihitsatam to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu bhatresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta etayar navidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance. And thus, material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis, chidyante sarvasamsaya, siyante chasya karmani, drista evatmanisware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text number 11. Etan nividyavananam ichitam akuto bayam yoginam nipra nirnitam harir amanukirtanam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, the great necessity for attaining attachment to Mukunda has been accredited. There are different types of persons who desire to attain success in different varieties of pursuits. Generally, the persons are materialists who desire to enjoy the fullest extent of material gratification. Next to them are the transcendentalists who have attained perfect knowledge about the nature of material enjoyment and thus are aloof from such an illusory way of life. More or less, they are satisfied in themselves by self-realization. Above them are the devotees of the Lord who neither aspire to enjoy the material world nor desire to get out of it. They are after the satisfaction of the Lord, Shri Krishna. In other words, the devotees of the Lord do not want anything on their personal account. If the Lord desires, the devotees can accept all sorts of material facilities, and if the Lord does not desire this, the devotees can leave aside all sorts of facilities, even up to the limit of salvation. nor are they self-satisfied because they want the satisfaction of the Lord only. Nor are they self-satisfied because they want the satisfaction of the Lord only. In this verse, Sri Sukadeva Goswami recommends the transcendental chanting of the holy name of the Lord. By offenseless chanting and hearing of the holy name of the Lord, one becomes acquainted with the transcendental form of the Lord, and then with the attributes of the Lord, and then with the transcendental nature of his pastimes, etc. Here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from authorities. This means that hearing from the authorities is the first essential. Hearing of the holy name gradually promotes one to the stage of hearing about his form, meaning Krishna's form, about his attributes, his pastimes, and so on. And thus, the necessity of the chanting of his glories develops successfully. This process is recommended not only for the successful execution of devotional service, but also even for those who are materially attached. According to Sri Sukadeva Goswami, this way of attaining success is an established fact concluded not only by him, but also by all other previous acharyas. Therefore, there is no need of further evidence. The process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, or as devotees of the Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami instructs that chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be loudly done, and it should be performed offenselessly as well, as recommended in the Padma Purana. So every day people are coming to the temple. So usually there's a bell that you have to ring. You have to chime it. And when you enter, you should always be chanting Hare Krishna. You shouldn't be silent. You should be chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you enter silently, it means that there's some hesitation. Like, for example, if you go to Tirupati, you'll see that, especially the Sri Vaishnavas who are dressed like Brahmins, and their whole, let's say, while they're waiting in line and walking into the temple and going through the different rooms till we finally get to the sanctum, sanctorum, or the place where you can have darshan of Balaji, they're all chanting Vedic mantras. And I mean, some of the lay people might not be chanting, but even the lay people are chanting. But the Vaishnavas are all reciting different mantras glorifying the Lord. In the same way, when we enter the temple, we should be chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We shouldn't be silent. The holy name should always be on our lips. So, and this is what's being said here too. He says, what did he say here? By offenseless chanting and hearing of the holy name of the Lord, one becomes acquainted with the transcendental form of the Lord, and then with the attributes of the Lord, and then with the transcendental nature of his pastimes, etc. Here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from authorities. Right? One should constantly chant. So that should be the defining quality of a genuine devotee. They're constantly chanting. You know. When you say hello to someone, you don't say hello, you say Hare Krishna. When you say goodbye to someone, you don't say goodbye, you say Hare Krishna. Or Hari Bol, chant Hare Krishna, right? And when you answer the phone, you don't say hello, you say Hare Krishna. When you're get a phone call for someone who's not interested in Krishna, you say, Hare Krishna. And they say, yeah, okay. Now, let's see, I wanted to talk to you. So, Hare Krishna should be the defining, saying the name of the Lord should be the defining characteristic of the devotee. And people catch on after a little while. And oftentimes they'll say, oh, Hare Krishna also to you, you know. So if they ask you, what is this Hare Krishna, why you say Hare Krishna, what does it mean? They say, well, that's the way we say hello in the spiritual world, right? But they say, well, what does it mean? I said, it's the name of God. God and his eternal consort, Radharani, who is the manifestation of his love and devotion, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I said, oh, okay. So, there are parallels to that. You know, people say, Salam Alaikum, Allahu Akbar. Right? And one time when I went to Morocco, long time ago, and I went to a very small town called Marrakesh. When I got there, it was late at night, but there was this one man. He was dressed, you know, a Muslim gentleman, and he was just sort of sitting on the ground or squatting on the ground and chanting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, all night long. He would, and the first time I went to Vrindavan, when Vrindavan was a very small town, there were no cars there. There were just rickshaws at that time. Maybe it is one car. Now it's completely changed. And there was no ISKCON temple. It was being built, so it was a construction site. So there was nowhere for devotees to sleep. So I was just sleeping outside on a pile of sand. And there was one dog next to me also. The dog was a devotee. Definitely, he was a devotee. He never left the compound. And he was asthmatic, so he was always going like that all night long, you know. But anyway, I could hear someone in the distance chanting Hare Krishna all night long. And chanting, you know, and it's almost like in a very mystical way, you know, and chanting loudly, you know. But he was far, I could understand he was far away, somewhere. Probably it was at Keshigat or somewhere on the Yamuna. But it was a very transcendental experience, right? Hearing someone chanting all night long, right? So that's the thing about Vrindavan. It's a place where you can chant 24 hours a day. You say, Jai Radhe, Jai Krishna, you know, and everyone has beads. Now, most people have beads, and they're chanting. Now they've introduced demigods. Before, there were no demigods being worshipped in Vrindavan. Now, a gigantic outside deity of Durga near the entrance of Vrindavan. So all the nonsense is filtering in. But when I first went there, it was a very, very small town, and it's very, very spiritual. It's still spiritual, very spiritual, but that mood at that time was a little different, you know. Okay, so then for it says, here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from authorities. This means that hearing from the authorities is the first essential. Hearing of the holy name gradually promotes one to the stage of hearing about his form, about his attributes, his pastimes, and so on. And thus the necessity of the chanting of his glories develops successfully. Notice that. The necessity of chanting his glories develops successfully. This process is recommended not only for the successful execution of devotional service, but also even for those who are materially attached. According to Sukadeva Goswami, this way of attaining success is an established fact, concluded not only by him, but also by all other previous acharyas. So what is he talking about? constant chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That this is what he's talking about. This way of attaining success. Well, this way of attaining success is constantly chanting Hare Krishna. Is an established fact concluded not only by him, but also by all other previous acharyas. Therefore, there's no need of further evidence. All the previous acharyas also have validated this. The process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, or as devotees of the Lord. In other words, everybody should be chanting all the time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shiva Jiva Goswami instructs that chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be loudly done, and it should be performed offenselessly as well as recommended by the Padma Purana. One can deliver himself from the effects of all sins by surrendering himself unto the Lord. One can deliver himself from all offenses at the feet of the Lord by taking shelter of his holy name. So he repeated that twice. He says, one can deliver himself from the effects of all sins by surrendering himself unto the Lord. One can deliver himself from all offenses at the feet of the Lord by taking shelter of his holy name. But one cannot protect himself if one commits an offense at the feet of the holy name of the Lord. Whoa. So you have to learn what the 10 offenses of the holy name are. All right? The 10 offenses of there's Dham Aparad, there's Vaishnava Aparad, and there's Nam Aparad. So there's three categories of offenses. Such offenses are mentioned in Padma Purana as being 10 in number. The first offense is to vilify the great devotees who have preached about the glories of the Lord. The second offense is to see the holy names of the Lord in terms of worldly distinction. The Lord is the proprietor of all the universes, and therefore he may be known in different places by different names, but that does not in any way qualify the fullness of the Lord. Okay, that means that the Lord is always supremely powerful, no matter what role he might accept. He might look like an ordinary human being. He might be in his infancy, but it doesn't mean that his powers are diminished in any way. The Lord is the proprietor of all the universes, and therefore he may be known in different places by different names, but that does not in any way qualify the fullness of the Lord. Any nomenclature which is meant for the Supreme Lord is as holy as the others, because they are all meant for the Lord. Such holy names are as powerful as the Lord, and there is no bar for anyone in any part of the creation to chant and glorify the Lord by the particular name of the Lord as it is locally understood. So some places people refer to the Lord as Lord Rama. Other places they refer to him as Krishna. Other places they refer to him as Govinda or Gopala or Mukunda and so forth. So it is in no way is the Lord diminished in any circumstance. They are all auspicious, meaning all the names are auspicious, and one should not distinguish such names of the Lord as material commodities. The third offense is to neglect the orders of the authorized acharyas or spiritual masters. The fourth offense is to vilify scriptures or Vedic knowledge. The fifth offense is to define the holy name of the Lord in terms of one's mundane calculation. The holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord himself, and one should understand the holy name of the Lord to be non-different from him. The sixth offense is to interpret the holy name. The Lord is not imaginary, nor is his holy name. There are persons with a poor fund of knowledge who think the Lord to be an imagination of the worshipper, and therefore think his holy name to be imaginary. Such a chanter of the name of the Lord cannot achieve the desired success in the matter of chanting the holy name. The seventh offense is to commit sins intentionally on the strength of the holy name. It means thinking that you can commit sins and then you can nullify the reactions by chanting Hare Krishna. In other words, it's premeditated. It's not accidental. You're purposely doing it as a way to, that, you figured out that the holy name can purify all sins. Therefore, I can sin as much as I want and just chant Hare Krishna. Everything will be all right. But everything will not be all right, because that's an offense to the holy name. One who takes advantage of this transcendental method and continues to commit sins on the expectation of neutralizing the effects of sins by chanting the holy name of the Lord is the greatest offender at the feet of the holy name. Such an offender cannot purify himself by any recommended method of purification. In other words, one may be a sinful man before chanting the holy name of the Lord, but after taking shelter in the holy name of the Lord and becoming immune, one should strictly restrain oneself from committing sinful acts with a hope that his method of chanting the holy name will give him protection. So that's considered the elephant offense. Why? Because if an elephant enters your cultivated garden, he'll make a complete mess of it very quickly. And anyone who uses the holy name, anyone who engages in premeditated sense gratification and then thinks they can use the holy name to nullify the reactions is the worst offender. The eighth offense is to consider the holy name of the Lord and his chanting method to be equal to some material auspicious activity. There are various kinds of good works for material benefits, but the holy name and his chanting are not mere auspicious holy services. Undoubtedly, the holy name is holy service, but he should never be utilized for such purposes. Since the holy name and the Lord are one and the same identity, one should not try to bring the holy name into the service of mankind. So, just like someone will say, oh, well, let's have a 24-hour kirtan so that we can get a permit to build a temple. That's not proper. Oh, let's chant Hare Krishna extra rounds so that so-and-so doesn't die. That's not the idea. The idea is to just focus on glorifying the Lord by chanting his holy name. You don't have to say, well, today we're chanting so that the operation goes good. That's not proper. You chant because you want to glorify the Lord. You don't make it into some kind of mundane thing that, sometimes they catch these. Sometimes the British caught these Irish, let's say, revolutionaries. So they're in prison. So they said, well, we're going to fast to the death unless they let us out. Well, the British let them fast to death. They didn't let them out, right? But, using fasting as a way to influence other people, that's not the goal of fasting. Fasting is to increase one's chanting and spiritual activity. And it's a sign that one is serious about diminishing sense gratification and increasing devotional service for the Lord. So it's not for a political purpose that one fasts. That's not counted as purification at all. So in the same way, the holy name should not be used for some material benefit. It should be chanted only for the glorification of the Lord. The idea is that the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer. He is no one's servant or order supplier. Similarly, since the holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord, one should not try to utilize the holy name for one's personal service. the ninth offense, you see how, Prabhupada spent a long time explaining that, more than the other ones. Right? The ninth offense is to instruct those who are not interested in chanting the holy name of the Lord about the transcendental nature of the holy name. If such instruction is imparted to an unwilling audience, the act is considered to be an offense at the feet of the holy name. The 10th offense is to become uninterested in the holy name of the Lord even after hearing of the transcendental nature of the holy name. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. False egoism is exhibited by thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the world and thinking everything in the world to be meant for the enjoyment of one's self only. The whole materialistic world is moving under such false egoism of I and mine, but the factual effect of chanting the holy name is to become free from such misconceptions. Okay, so this is a very interesting purport. And the verse itself, Itan nividyamananam ichitam akuto bayam yoginam nripanir nitam harir namana kirtanam. It's a very nice verse, and it's good to recite this verse. O King, constant chanting the holy name of the Lord. You notice it says constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. So the devotee is not self-satisfied because he has a desire. The desire is to please Krishna by everything he does, or she does. So now we're learning the difference between the karmis, the jnanis, and the yogis, and the bhaktas. The bhaktas have no material desire to satisfy. They're not seeking sense gratification. But they do have desires. Their desires are to please Krishna and Guru. And they are seeking to please Krishna. So, therefore, one who doesn't understand devotional service could very easily misinterpret and think that the devotee is doing exactly what I'm doing, right? He's going to the bank, well, of course, he's chanting in the streets. Well, I only do that on New Year's Eve, after I've drank a lot of champagne and beer and all these other things. But he's dancing and he's singing, and he's going to the bank, and he's taking his kids to school and bringing them back, and he works. So it's just like me, no difference. No, there's a big difference. The difference between gold and iron, or the difference between real ego and false ego. Ego is there. Ego is I am. But when a person says, I am the eternal servant of Krishna, that's real ego. And when a person says, I am the servant of my senses, that's the false ego. So the I am is there for both. But when one identifies with the material nature, that's false ego, and the material body and everything in relationship to it. Basically, this English poet named Rudyard Kipling said, society, friendship, and love divinely bestowed by God. Well, actually, it's not true. Well, for the materialist, that's true, but for a person on a spiritual platform, gradually one becomes detached from society, friendship, and love. It doesn't mean you don't have any friends, but you don't have friends engaged in sense gratification. You don't associate in a society of people whose their goal of life is sense gratification. And you don't associate people for sense gratification because they call love sense gratification, right? So, yeah, we have a society, it's called the Krishna Consciousness, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but theoretically everybody's interested in pleasing Krishna, not pleasing oneself, right? And if we actually act like that, then we understand Krishna consciousness. But if we have some selfish desire to accomplish through Krishna consciousness, we're not actually a devotee. Because a devotee has no selfish bones. All the bones belong to Krishna, and he uses them all in Krishna's service. So to understand this takes time, because you could say, well, this person's doing exactly what I'm doing. He's going every day to Microsoft, or he's on Zoom meetings, and he's got his 401k, and he's doing this, and he's doing that. It's all the same. There's no difference. No, there's a big difference. Where the devotee is always chanting Hare Krishna and always thinking of how to please Guru and Krishna, and actually practically doing it, and by expending their free time to do these things. And also, they're also giving part of their income to the temple, so that to support the activities of the temple, which is preaching Krishna consciousness. So there is a big difference, and we should be very cognizant of that big difference, and not go blindly back to seeking sense gratification. Okay. The senses are going to be pleased anyway in Krishna consciousness. When you take prasadam, your senses are pleased. When you learning Srimad Bhagvatam, your mind and senses are pleased. When you're engaged in devotional service, your senses are pleased. So it's not that there's no sense gratification. When you're taking a shower and putting on clean clothes, your senses are pleased. But in this sense, that Krishna is the first enjoyer and you are the secondary enjoyer. Whereas the materialist, for the materialist, he is the first enjoyer and everybody else is second, including God. So, therefore, we offer food first to Krishna through the Guru and Krishna. And then if we make a sincere offering, they offer it back to us as prasadam. So if we are eating always prasadam, we become purified, more and more purified as we go along. And that should be the symptom, that the devotee makes spiritual advancement gradually and progressively. Okay, so these are some points that have to be understood, so that when we see ourselves slipping away from pure devotional service to sense gratification again, then we have to be able to catch ourselves and become more determined to follow strictly the principles. So yesterday we were talking some more about Yogamaya and how she acts in the spiritual world, and opposite of Mahamaya. But both Yogamaya and Mahamaya are types of illusion. And as we said, the Yogamaya illusion brings the devotees closer to Krishna, and Mahamaya takes them farther away in order to teach them severe lessons so that they can gradually understand that they should go the other way, toward Krishna rather than away from Krishna. So it says that those under the spell of the material energy cannot at all appreciate the activities of Yogamaya. For a conditioned soul can hardly understand the pure reciprocation between the Lord and his devotee. But by executing devotional service under the regulative principles, one can become very highly elevated and then begin to appreciate the dealings of pure love under the management of Yogamaya. So this is a profound, short paragraph. And therefore, in Krishna consciousness, we begin with sadhana bhakti, following the rules and regulations. Just like you begin the violin by being a scratch-a-doodler. My violin teacher told me that. What is a scratch-a-doodler? That is, the first sounds you make with the violin are like that, right? But if you keep practicing and get the instructions of the teacher properly, then you're starting to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and other things, right? So practice makes perfect. So sadhana bhakti is practicing under rules and regulations, Krishna consciousness. But just like the violin player, you know, after 10 years or 20 years of being trained by the expert violin teacher, now they make beautiful sounds all the time. There's no more like that, right? You know, it's perfectly beautiful sounds in chanting. So in the same way, we get trained in Krishna consciousness to use our senses only in the service of Krishna, and our mind only in the service of Krishna, our intelligence only in the service of Krishna. Eventually, our false ego becomes purified and becomes real ego. And then we can begin to understand a little bit the actions of Yogamaya, right? And which is, as it says, managing the dealings of pure love. Yogamaya is managing the dealings of pure love. That's a big, big statement, and it requires a long time to understand what's meant by that. In the spiritual loving sentiment induced by the Yogamaya potency, both Lord Shri Krishna and the damsels of Vraja forget themselves in spiritual rapture. Yeah, and you see something like this even in the material world, even in mundane life. Like, for example, when I was living in France, I had some relatives there in a small town up in the mountains near the Swiss border. And so there was a little Armenian community there. So, and I had an uncle there. And he used to sell socks. Every day he'd get up 4 o'clock in the morning, get ready, and go to the public market, their outdoor markets. And he sold socks. That was his specialty. Like, he had all kinds of socks. And then he'd come back and have his lunch and then take a little snooze. And then he'd go back out again, do some more business. Anyway, it's a different type of life, at least at that time in France. So one time there was like a wedding. And so all the different people in that town, it's like a small community. They all know each other, and they're sort of almost related to each other in some way or other. And so all these older men came, and they all dressed the same way. They have a suit and tie and a hat, right? And it's not something like, you know, the United States in the 1920s and 30s, right? And then they all came, and, you know, in the beginning they were all very, sedate and, happy, but, not exuberant and polite, and, and dressed nicely and talking, softly, everything. But then they started drinking some liquor. And then all these guys who were really sedate and very dignified, they sort of loosened their tie a little bit and unbuttoned their suit, and they started dancing, and then all of a sudden they went crazy. jumping up and down and screaming and having a great time, and, in other words, forgetting who they are, in a sense, right? So what does it say here? It says, both Lord Krishna and the damsels of Raja forget themselves in spiritual rapture. Well, they didn't have spiritual rapture. They had liquor rapture, right? But they forgot themselves, and they started acting in ways that they don't act normally, but that potential is in them, right? So by the influence of such forgetfulness, the attractive beauty of the gopis plays a prominent part in the transcendental satisfaction of the Lord. Now, this is a huge statement. To try and understand what it means, you'd have to actually, you can hear about it, but to actually understand it, you'd have to experience it. It says, by the influence of such forgetfulness, what's the forgetfulness? It's due to the spiritual rapture, right? And you don't have to drink or any liquor. It's the spiritual rapture happens because of the extreme beauty of Krishna and the gopis, right? And the attraction they have for each other. So I'm going to read something now that explains this in a practical way. Because Prabhupada talks about Cupid. Now, Cupid in Sanskrit literature is Kamadeva. Right? The Greeks got all this stuff from the Greeks called Cupid Eros, and then the Romans called him Cupido. But this whole idea of Cupid is from the Vedic history, and it's a demigod called Kamadeva. But when Kamadeva was asked to shoot his arrows at Lord Shiva so that Shiva would produce an offspring, I mean, he was always meditating, right? He was not interested in producing offspring, right? So the devas asked Kamadeva, okay, you shoot him with your arrows, and then, it'll increase his desires, and then Parvati is there, and then they'll have some kids, right? Because we need a child who, before 7 days old, can kill this one demon who has special powers, and they can only be killed by a child less than 7 days old. So Shiva gets shot by Cupid's arrows, and then it breaks his meditation, and he gets upset about it, and he looks at Kamadeva with his third eye and burns him to death, right? This tremendous light comes out of his third eye, and he burns Kamadeva, who dies. But then he and Parvati have their first child called Kartikeya. And Kartikeya is born with all the powers, even though he's just a little kid at that time, but he grows very quickly, and he kills the demon before he's above 7 years old. Okay. So anyway, now Kamadeva is dead. So this is where we're going to pick up the story. And this story is in the 55th chapter of the Krishna book. It's called Pradyumna, born to Krishna and Rukmini. It is said that Cupid, see now talking about Cupid, right, or Kamadeva, who is directly part and parcel of Lord Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, and who was formerly burned to ashes by the anger of Lord Shiva, took birth from the womb of Rukmini, begotten by Krishna. This is Kamadeva, a demigod of the heavenly planets, especially capable of inducing lusty desires. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has many grades and parts and parcels, but the quadruple expansions of Krishna, Vasudeva, Sankarsan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are directly in the Vishnu category. Kama, or the Cupid demigod, who later took his birth from the womb of Rukmini, was also named Pradyumna, but he cannot be the Pradyumna of the Vishnu category. He belongs to the category of Jiva Tattva. But for exhibiting special power in the category of demigods, he was a part and parcel of the super prowess of Pradyumna. So, this is also called a Shaktabush avatar. There's two types of Shaktabush avatars. One is a direct incarnation of the Lord, and the second is a jiva, who's given a special power. Just like Vyasadeva is a Shaktabush avatar. He's also a jiva, but he's been given this special power. And then Prithu Maharaj and others like that. Narada Muni also, they received this special power. And therefore they're considered an incarnation of the Lord. That is the verdict of the Goswamis. In other words, the 6 Goswamis all agree on this understanding of Pradyumna. In other words, Pradyumna is an expansion of Krishna. He's part of the first and second Chaturvyuha. But Kamadeva takes a second birth and is named Pradyumna, and he is like a partial expansion of Pradyumna, right? Or he's an empowered jiva, and he's also called Pradyumna. Therefore, so it says that, but for exhibiting special power in the category of demigods, he was a part and parcel of the super prowess of Pradyumna. That is the verdict of the Goswamis. Therefore, when Cupid was burned to ashes by the anger of Lord Shiva, he merged into the body of Vasudeva, and to get his body again, he was begotten in the womb of Rukmini by Lord Krishna himself. Thus he was born as the son of Krishna and celebrated by the name Pradyumna, because he was begotten by Lord Krishna directly. His qualities were most similar to those of Krishna. There was a demon of the name Sambara, who was destined to be killed by Pradyumna. Sambara demon knew of his destiny, and as soon as he learned that Pradyumna had been born, he took the shape of a woman and kidnapped the baby from the maternity home less than 10 days after his birth. The demon took him and threw him directly into the sea. But as it is said, whoever is protected by Krishna, no one can kill, and whoever is destined to be killed by Krishna, no one can protect. Rake Krishna Mari Krishna Rakiki. When Pradyumna was thrown into the sea, a big fish immediately swallowed him. Later, this fish was caught in the net of a fisherman, and the fish was later sold to the Sambara demon. In the kitchen of the demon was a maidservant whose name was Mayavati. This woman had formerly been the wife of Cupid, called Arati. When the fish was presented to the demon Sambara, it was taken charge of by his cook, who was to make it into a palatable fish preparation. Demons and Rakshasas are accustomed to eat meat, fish, and similar non-vegetarian foods. Demons like Ravana, Kamsa, and Hiranyakashipu, although born of Brahmana and Kshatriya fathers, used to take meat and eat without discrimination. This practice is still prevalent in India, and those who eat meat and fish are generally called demons and Rakshasas. So now, the next time you meet your Hindu friend who's eating meat and fish indiscriminately, you can say, "Oh, how are you, my dear friend Raj Asura?" You'll say, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean? My name's not Asura." No, you are Asura. According to chapter 55 of the 10th canto, you are a demon because you are no different than Muslims or other demons like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and Kamsa, right? So, yeah, you can't be really a Hindu and eat meat, right? Unless it's like highly regulated. Once a month you can kill a black goat and you have to say, "Mamsa kadati mamsa." Now I'm killing you, and later on you're going to kill me, right? And understand, and it can only be on the full moon night, and there has to be a brahmana there to help you do it correctly. And it's only one black goat a month. So it's highly regulated. When the cook was cutting the fish, he found within its stomach a nice baby, which he immediately presented to the charge of Mayavati, who was an assistant in the kitchen affairs. This woman was surprised to see how such a nice baby could remain within the belly of a fish, and the situation perplexed her. The great sage Narada then appeared and explained to her about the birth of Pradyumna and how the baby had been taken away from Sambara and later thrown into the sea. In this way, the whole story was disclosed to Mayavati. Mayavati knew that she had previously been Rati, the wife of Cupid. After her husband was burned to ashes by the wrath of Lord Shiva, she was always expecting him to come back in a material form. This woman was engaged for cooking rice and dal in the kitchen, but when she got this nice baby and understood that he was Cupid, her own husband, she naturally took charge of him and with great affection began to bathe him regularly. Miraculously, the baby swiftly grew up, and within a very short period, he became a beautiful young man. His eyes were just like petals of lotus flowers, and his arms were long, reaching down to his knees. Any woman who happened to see him was captivated by his bodily beauty. What a story. It's an amazing history, right? And it's factual. Lord Chaitanya also was so tall, he's like over 7 feet tall, but when he would stretch his arms down, it would go a little bit below his knees. So that's the sign of someone very special. Mayavati could understand that her former husband, Cupid, born as Pradyumna, had grown into such a nice young man, and she also gradually became captivated and lusty. Smiling before him with a feminine attractiveness, she expressed her desire for sexual union. He therefore inquired from her, "How is it possible that first you were affectionate like a mother, and now you are expressing the symptoms of a lusty woman? What is the reason for such a change?" On hearing this statement from Pradyumna, the woman Rati replied, "My dear sir, you are the son of Lord Krishna. Before you were 10 days old, you were stolen by the Sambara demon and later thrown into the water and swallowed by a fish. In this way, you have come under my care. But actually, in your former life as Cupid, I was your wife. Therefore, my manifestation of conjugal symptoms is not at all incompatible. Sambara wanted to kill you, and he is endowed with various mystic powers. Therefore, before he again attempts to kill you, please kill him as soon as possible with your divine power. Since you were stolen by Sambara, your mother, Rukmini Devi, has been in a very grievous condition, like a kurari bird who has lost her babies. She is very affectionate toward you, and since you have been taken away from her, she has been living like a cow, aggrieved over the loss of its calf." Mayavati had mystic knowledge of supernatural powers. Supernatural powers are generally known as Maya, and to surpass all such powers, there is another supernatural power called Maha-Maya. Mayavati had the knowledge of the mystic power of Maha-Maya, and she delivered to Pradyumna this specific energetic power in order to defeat the mystic powers of the Sambara demon. Thus, being empowered by his wife, Pradyumna immediately went before Sambara and challenged him to fight. Pradyumna addressed him in very strong language so that his temper would be agitated and he would be moved to fight. At Pradyumna's words, the demon Sambara, being insulted, felt as a snake feels after being struck by someone's foot. A serpent cannot tolerate being kicked by another animal or by a man, and it immediately bites its opponent. Sambara felt the words of Pradyumna as if they were a kick. He immediately took his club in his hand and appeared before Pradyumna to fight. Roaring like a thundering cloud in great anger, the demon began to beat Pradyumna with his club, just as a thunderbolt beats a mountain. Pradyumna protected himself with his own club and eventually struck the demon very severely. In this way, the fighting between Sambarasura and Pradyumna began in earnest. But Sambarasura knew the art of mystic powers and could raise himself into the sky and fight from outer space. There is a demon of the name Maya, not Maya, but Maya, and Sambarasura had learned many mystic powers from him. He thus raised himself high in the sky and threw various types of nuclear weapons at the body of Pradyumna. To combat the mystic powers of Sambarasura, Pradyumna invoked another mystic power known as Mahavidya, which was different from the black mystic power. The Mahavidya mystic power is based on the quality of goodness. Sambara, understanding that his enemy was formidable, took assistance from various kinds of demoniac mystic powers belonging to the Guyakas, the Gandharvas, the Pisachas, and the snakes and the Rakshasas. But although the demon exhibited his mystic powers and took shelter of supernatural strength, Pradyumna was able to counteract his strength and powers by the superior Mahavidya. When Sambarasura was defeated in every respect, Pradyumna took his sharp sword and immediately cut off the demon's head, which was decorated with a helmet and valuable jewels. When Pradyumna thus killed the demon, all the demigods in the higher planetary systems showered flowers on him. So, therefore, we should understand that a chaste wife develops mystic powers and can endow her husband with power to do wonderful things in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the relationship of devotees is misunderstood by most people. It might even be misunderstood by devotees. That's possible also. But if the husband and wife both practice Krishna consciousness seriously, then wonderful things happen. Wonderful, wonderful things happen. And everything that's negative about the man-woman relationship that we're hearing about all the time in the scriptures and Prabhupada's purports is nullified, and one becomes a Vaikuntha couple rather than a Asuric couple. So the Vaikuntha couple are able to do wonderful things in Krishna consciousness together and help each other go back to Godhead. This should be our goal in life, to sanctify relationships through purified acts of devotional service, purified chanting, purified mind, purified intelligence, purified senses, and so forth. This should be our goal. Then it doesn't matter whether you're in the material world or the spiritual world, because you're purified. And you're purified always by continually chanting, offering your food, and eating prasadam, and doing all these wonderful things. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the material world or the spiritual world. Pradyumna's wife, Mayavadi, could travel in outer space, and therefore they directly reached Dwarka, his father's capital, by the airways. They passed above the palace of Lord Krishna and came down as a cloud comes down with lightning. The intersection of a palace is known as the Antapura, private apartments. Pradyumna and Mayavadi could see many women there, and they sat down among them. When the women saw Pradyumna dressed in yellowish garments with very long arms, curly hair, beautiful reddish eyes, a smiling face, jewelry and ornaments, they at first could not recognize him as a personality different from Krishna. They all felt very bashful at the sudden presence of Krishna and wanted to hide in a different corner of the palace. When the women saw, however, that not all the characteristics of Lord Krishna were present in the personality of Pradyumna, out of curiosity they came back to see him and his wife, Mayavadi. All of them were conjecturing as to who he was, for he was so beautiful. Among the women was Rukmini Devi, who was equally beautiful with her lotus-like eyes. Seeing Pradyumna, she naturally remembered her own son, and milk began to flow from her breasts out of motherly affection. She then began to wonder, who is this beautiful young boy? He appears to be the most beautiful person. Who is this fortunate young woman able to conceive this nice boy in her womb and become his mother? And who is that young woman who has accompanied him? How have they met? Remembering my own son, who was stolen from the maternity home, I can only guess that if he is living somewhere, he might have grown by this time to be like this boy. Simply by intuition, Rukmini could understand that Pradyumna was her own lost son. She could also observe that Pradyumna resembled Lord Krishna in every respect. She was struck with wonder as to how he had acquired all the characteristics of Lord Krishna. She therefore began to think more confidently that the boy must be her own grown-up son, because she felt so much affection for him, and, as an auspicious sign, her left arm was trembling. So if your right arm is trembling, it means something else. But if your left arm is trembling, now you know what it means. It means that there is something very auspicious. At that very moment, Lord Krishna, along with his father and mother, Devaki and Vasudeva, appeared on the scene. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could understand everything, yet in that situation he remained silent. However, by the desire of Lord Shri Krishna, the great sage Narada also appeared, and he disclosed all the incidents, how Pradyumna had been stolen from the maternity home, how he had grown up and had come there with his wife, Mayavadi, who had formerly been Rati, the wife of Cupid. When everyone was informed of the mysterious disappearance of Pradyumna and how he had grown up, they were all struck with wonder, because they had gotten back their dead son after they were almost hopeless of his return. When they understood that it was Pradyumna who was present, they received him with great delight. One after another, all the members of the family, Devaki, Vasudeva, Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Balarama, Rukmini, and all the women of the family embraced Pradyumna and his wife, Mayavadi. When the news of Pradyumna's return spread all over the city of Dwarka, all the astonished citizens came with great eagerness to see the lost Pradyumna. The dead son had come back, they said. What can be more pleasing than this? Srila Sukadeva Goswami has explained that in the beginning, all the ladies of the palace, who were all mothers and stepmothers of Pradyumna, mistook him to be Krishna and were all bashful, infected by the desire for conjugal love. The explanation is that Pradyumna's personal appearance was exactly like Krishna's, and he was factually Cupid himself. There was no cause for astonishment, therefore, when the mothers of Pradyumna and the other women mistook him in that way. It is clear from this statement that Pradyumna's bodily characteristics were so similar to Krishna's that he was mistaken for Krishna even by his mother. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 55th chapter of Krishna, Pradyumna born to Krishna and Rukmini. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We'll stop right there. Have you ever heard this story before? Yeah, yeah. But I don't think a lot of people have. You've read it before, okay. But it's a fascinating story. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So starting tomorrow, we'll go back to having homework. Took a little break from that. Hare Krishna. Guru Charana Padma Kebala Bhakati Sadma Bandhu Mui Sabadana Mate Janara prasadeva e bhavatoriya jai. Krishna prapti hoya hoite jaha hoite Guru mukha padma vaikya Chittete koriyakya Arana koriyamane asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utamagati Ye passade pure sava asa Shakshudan dilaje janmi janmi Prabhu se Shakshudan dilaje janmi janmi Prabhu se Divya gani devakasito Prema bhakti jaha hote avidya vinasa jate Prema bhakti jaha hote avidya vinasa jate Vedega chanaracharito Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokenat Lokera Jivana Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Diha Mori Padachaya Aha Prabhu Kora Daya Deha Mori Padachaya Ebe Aska Sekti Bhuvana Ebe Aska Sekti Bhuvana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parvajika Chasta Terasatereshi Shri Srimad Divine Grace. I see Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kahos Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakund Radha Kundakiri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Gangamaya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to the lotus feet is a perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, breath of his breath. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada.